Good morning. Oh, man, I know we can do better than that. Good morning. Good morning. Again, it's just a blessing to be in the house of the Lord one more time. I'm so delighted to be back with you guys. Again, thank God for my dear friend and my brother, Brother Joe. Thank God for this church family, and I was very delighted when he asked me some time ago would I come, and he's given me an opportunity to share with you about our new church plant. But many of you that know me know that today I definitely will share about our church plant, but I love preaching. I love preaching, can't help but to preach. And so I'm going to take a scripture this morning, going to unpack the scripture, but we're going to include our church plant in this text. And you may not see at first where we're going, but I promise you if you stay with me long enough, I will get you to where you need to be at. So if you have your Bibles, the book of Revelations. Book of Revelations. And again, you may say, so what does a new church plant have to do with the book of Revelations? And so I'm glad that you asked, and if you'll just buckle up and hold on, I am going to show you by the grace of God. The book of Revelations, chapter 3. Book of Revelations, chapter 3, and we're going to be looking at verses 7 through 13. Revelations, chapter 3, and verses 7 through 13. And I'll be reading from the New King James Version. So when you found Revelations, chapter 3, and beginning with verse number 7, you'll find these said words, Revelations chapter 3, beginning with verse number 7, and it reads as follows. And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write these things, he who is holy, he who is true, he who has the key of David, he who opens and no one shuts, and shut and no one opens. I know your works. See, I have set before you an open door, and no one can shut it. For you have a little strength, have kept my word, and have not denied my name. Indeed, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews and are not, but lie indeed. I will make them come and worship before your feet, and to know that I have loved you. Because you have kept my command to persevere, I also will keep you from the hour of trials which should come upon the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth. Behold, I'm coming quickly. Hold fast what you have, that no one may take your crown. He who overcomes, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go out no more. I will write on him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my God, and I will write on him my new name. Verse number 13, he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Again, God's word for God's people, and God's word is already blessed. This morning, I want to use this as a brief subject, again, coming from Revelation, dealing with and having this opportunity to not only just talk about some things about this new church plant, Community Point Baptist Church in Hernando, Mississippi, but also at the same time trying to unpack the scripture and share God's word with you. And I want to use this as a brief subject this morning. I want to talk about the type of church that God utilizes. The type of church that God utilizes. Now, when I talk about church, when we talk about this ideal of church, first thing I want to make sure that you understand, I'm not talking about, nor is the author of the text talking about a building. We're not talking about a building. We're not talking about the bricks. We're not talking about the metal. That's not what I'm talking about when I talk about Community Point, or when you hear me mention the word church or even read it out of the text this morning. But the type of church that God utilizes in this text, he's referring to, or God is referring to, the people. You and I, brothers and sisters, are the one that make up God's holy church. So the type of church that God utilizes. And in our text this morning, the church here in Philadelphia, if you notice here in our text, was commended by Jesus. This church, like Community Point Baptist Church and so many other churches, this church has a world vision. It's not just enough, brothers and sisters, to have a vision right here in the community, and that's good, but we should want the gospel to be spread. We should want to share the gospel with any and everybody that comes. As the Bible said, whosoever will. And this church, like Community Point, has a world vision. The truth of the Lord's return was the beacon light and the hope of this church as well as Community Point Baptist Church. The Lord stands before this church to offer not blame like he did so many of the other churches, but here in this text this morning, God here, he offers his blessings. Not the threat of fearful vengeance, but the thrill of fresh vision. Now, when you think about the type of church that God utilizes, there's some things here in the text, and if you notice the text here or your electronic device, whatever it is that you're reading here in these services or even online this morning, if you notice, it should be lit all up in red because it's God who is the one that's speaking. Christ is the one who is speaking in the text this morning. And the first thing that you notice, if God is going to utilize his church, or the type of church that God can utilize, the first thing we notice here in the text when we look at verse 7, and it says, "And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write these things, says he who is holy, he who is true, he who has the key of David, he who opens and no one shuts, and shuts and no one opens." Here's the first point that I want to bring out to you or unpack in this text this morning. The Christ of the type of church God utilizes. That's the first point. The Christ. If God is going to utilize his church, then the first thing you notice here in the text, the Christ of the type of church that God utilizes. In verse number 7 here, we find this morning, brothers and sisters, the saints are given a vision of the righteousness of the King. The Bible tells us that God is so holy and he is so true that a man can stake everything on his word. I want to make sure that you know, in our preaching, in our teaching, at Community Point, at Starkville Community Church, brothers and sisters, if you don't hear anything else, you ought to know when you leave, when you come, and when you go. You should know and you should be able to rest assured that you can stake everything on God's holy word. No matter what you're going through, no matter what you may be dealing with, no matter what you find yourself struggling with this morning, and if we all be honest with ourselves, we all have problems, we all have trials and tribulations, and if you're here this morning, and if you're saying, well, I don't have any problems, I don't have any trials and tribulations, as a seasoned pastor once told me, as my granddaddy once told me, just keep getting up in the morning. Keep getting up in the morning. Keep living. And the longer you live, sooner or later, you will begin to have trials and tribulations in your life. And the reason why I know this is because even God's word said that we would have trials and tribulations. But he also said, be ye of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. But in spite of your tribulations that you're experiencing now, or that you will experience down the road, the church should let the world know, the church should proclaim that we can stake everything on God's holy word. And the reason why we can stake everything on God's holy word, brothers and sisters, is because God can be trusted. God is described here in the Bible as the one who has the key of David. And whoever has the key, he has access. Whoever has access, he also has authority. He opens and no man can shut, and he shuts and no man can open. Brothers and sisters, I want to make sure that you understand and that you know in our churches today, whether it be Starkville Community Point or even Community Point Baptist Church, as we're preaching, proclaiming the gospel to a dying world, we should proclaim and we should never forget that all power and all authority is in God's hand. And not only is it in his hands, it's also in his hands because he has the key of David. So that's the Christ of the type of church that God utilizes. That's the first point. But the second point here I want you to notice in the text this morning, notice here in verse number 8 where the author talks about the condition of the type of church that God utilizes. We just talked about the Christ. But now notice here in verse number 8 where he says, I know your works. See, I've set before you an open door, and no one can shut it, for you have a little strength. You have a little strength, have kept my words, and have not denied my name. So we notice here the condition of the type of church that God utilizes. Verse number 8, again, it brings out and it shows us that human weakness is no hindrance to the power of God. And I know sometimes, brothers and sisters, we want to be on top of the world every day. I know sometimes we wish that we can get up every morning with a smile on our face and just ready to go and take on the world. But if you're like myself, brothers and sisters, and I have to be honest with you, as much as I love to preach and teach and share the word of God, I have to be honest with you because I love being real. There's just some mornings, Brother Joe, I don't feel like getting up. There's some mornings I wish that when the alarm clock goes off, I do just like my children do. They're not here yet, but they'll be here later on. And when we have to get them up every morning at 5 o'clock for school, and I cut on the light, the first thing that all my children do is take the cover and they just pull it over their head, as if that's going to stop me and their mother from getting them up to go to school in the morning. And there are just some days, brothers and sisters, I don't want to get up. There's some days I want to pull the cover over my head. There are just some days I get up and I'm tired. I'm tired. Not tired of the work. I just get tired in the work. There is a difference. But I want to make sure that you understand this morning that human weakness is no hindrance to the power of God. Even though you may find yourself weak this morning from whatever it is that you are struggling with, whatever it is that you're trying to deal with this morning, I want to encourage you that your weakness is no hindrance to the power of God. Because God can hit a straight line with a crooked stick. God's greatness is manifested in his human weakness. If you don't believe that God's greatness is manifest in your weakness and in my weakness, if you go back in the Bible and you'll read a story about Paul who had a thorn in the flesh. And the Bible said, and I'm just paraphrasing very quickly, but the Bible said that this thorn, it was a very painful thorn. And I want to make sure that you understand, when the author talks about the thorn, this was not the thorn on a rose bush. But this is a wooden plank that is in the side of Paul. It is very painful, brothers and sisters. And the Bible tells us, Paul even says himself, that he petitioned God not once, but 3 times to remove this thorn, because Paul could not do it himself. And every time he petitioned God to remove it, God would not. But if you notice in the text, God, even though he would not remove it, he did tell Paul, but my grace is sufficient. I want to make sure that you know today, brothers and sisters, even here at Starkville Community Church, or whether it's Community Point Baptist Church in Hernando, Mississippi, I want to make sure that you understand that as the word of God goes out, we should proclaim, that we should tell people on a daily basis that in spite of their weakness, in spite of the thorn that you may be carrying around with you this morning, you need to know and you need to understand that God's grace is sufficient. That God has enough power to carry you and I. God has enough power to take care of us even in the midst of our trials and tribulation. Because again, God can hit a straight line with a crooked stick. God's greatness is manifest in human weakness. God can take rotten, low-down sinners like you and I this morning, brothers and sisters. And here's the thing that I love about God. He can take rotten, low-down sinner like Brian Hood. I won't even talk about you this morning because you may not feel like that. You may feel as if you have it together this morning. You may feel that you have it together all the time and you've never done any wrong. But I want to make sure that you understand I don't feel like that, brothers and sisters. I have done wrong. When I look back over my life and I see where God has brought me from, I can't help but to thank him. Because I've been wrong. I've messed up. And guess what? Even at the age of 41, even standing here now, I will still mess up. But the thing that I can't help but to continue to praise God about is that God will take a low-down, dirty sinner like me, and he uses somebody like me to teach small groups. He uses somebody like me to sing his praises and to preach his gospel to other people. The faithfulness that this church in our text, along with Community Point, does not earn us an open door, but our faithfulness to the word produces an open door. I believe I need to say that one more time. I believe that's worth saying. I heard somebody say, ooh, ooh, so that must have been good. I believe I need to say that one more time. The faithfulness that this church in the text this morning, along with Community Point Baptist Church, does not earn us an open door, but our faithfulness to the word produces an open door. How faithful are you to God's word? Even in the midst of your struggles and your trials and your tribulations, do you still trust God even when you can't trace his hand in the dark? Even when you don't know what God is up to, do you still trust God? Because if you're faithful to God's word, the text tells us here this morning that his word will produce an open door in your life and in my life today. And brothers and sisters, I want to make sure that you understand that every time that you read and you study your Bible, when you see the word open door, when the Bible refers to the word or the phrase open door, it's an opportunity for you and I to witness. It's an opportunity for you and I to witness, brothers and sisters, and I want to make sure that you understand in your seats you should have a brochure, a program, either a picture of my family and I, or there should be another brochure there as well. But I want to make sure, brothers and sisters, that you understand that every church should be witnessing. Every church, every opportunity that we get, we should be witnessing. What are we witnessing? I'm not talking about what you've seen on the news last night or what you read in the local newspaper. Don't get me wrong. Those things are okay in their prospective place. But listen, there are so many lost people here in Starkville, so many lost people in Hernando, that there's enough lost people in all of these counties to fill up every church. And we don't have time, brothers and sisters, to talk about what was on the news or who said what or who did what. But every time God opens up a door and gives you an opportunity to witness, I encourage you today, I plead with you today, I petition you today to please share his gospel. Because it's only his gospel, it is only his word that will change the lives of men, women, boys, and girls. And so whenever you read the open door in the Bible, it's an opportunity again to witness. A door represents, brothers and sisters, one or two things. Either a door represents access or it represents denial. Or denial, I should say. If you don't believe me, every time you read the word again, or you read the word door in the Bible, if you think about the book of Genesis, chapter 18, and the author talks about door, that means fellowship. If you think about the book of Exodus chapter 12, and when the author talks about the doorpost, it means redemption. When you think about Psalms number 84, and he talks about door, he's referring to service. When you think about Matthew chapter 7, and he talks about door, he refers to blessings. So again, a door represents access or denial. And I encourage you, brothers and sisters, pray today, if you hadn't already, but pray today that sometime this week, that there will be an open door for you to share the gospel. If you don't do anything else, this is our main business. We ought to be sharing the gospel. Community Point Baptist Church is going to be sharing the gospel. You ought to pray, brothers and sisters, that God will open up a door for you to share the gospel. And I don't know about you this morning, but I want God to always open up a door, not for me to receive blessings always at Community Point, but for Community Point to be a blessing through the open door. You ought to want to be a blessing to somebody else. You ought to want to be able to share God's word with somebody else and see how God changes the lives and the hearts of an individual. But here's the thing about it. In your prayer to God and in asking God to open up a door for you, be careful when you ask God for an open door. Because when God opens up a door, he may send cancer your way. God may send a sick family member your way, or God may even allow your health to break down. But every time God does it, brothers and sisters, it's an opportunity for his power to become manifest in our weakness. Now, we talked about open doors, but I want to make sure that you also notice here in the text when he talks about closed doors, because sometimes closed doors are blessings too. Sometimes closed doors are blessings too. We get excited every time God opens up doors. And then if you're like myself, when I was younger, I'm 41 now, but in my teens and in my 20s, I would be disappointed sometimes when doors were closed in my face. But the longer I live and when I look back over my life, Brother Joe, I've discovered that there are just some doors that God shut. While I was disappointed, I failed to realize and understand, brothers and sisters, those were blessings as well. And sometimes closed doors are blessings too. Because God knew that there were just some things, brothers and sisters, that you and I did not need, because if we had gotten it, then we would have put it before him. Now, I want to get down on your level for just a few moments. But you just think about those times when you had puppy love. And you liked him so much, or you liked her so much. And you wrote that little note like I did when I was in school. Do you like me? And we had 3 little boxes. Yes, no, and maybe. And you'd be surprised how many times I wrote out that little note with those 3 little boxes and slid it to the person that I liked. And when I got it back, you wouldn't believe how many no's I got. And brothers and sisters, did it break my heart? Yes, it did. It broke my heart. I was disappointed. Jobs that I applied for and did not get, was I disappointed? Yes, I was. But now, brothers and sisters, when I look back over my life, I can't help but to thank God for some of those closed doors. Because again, God knew that if I had received some of these things, that I would have put it before him. Think about where you would be, not just only for open doors, but also think about where you would be or not be because of some closed doors. And there are just some people, brothers and sisters, I want to make sure that you understand, there are some people who shouldn't even be in your life right now. There's some people who shouldn't even be in your circle right now. And God has to close the door. And if you don't believe me, if you're like myself, and you've said many times, as I've said to myself, if I knew then what I know now, I would have left that door closed. And brothers and sisters, be careful, because every time you pull on a door that God wants to keep closed in your life, you are inviting trouble. Those people who won't let you in their group, and yet you keep pulling on the door because you want to fit in. You want everybody to like you. You want to get along with every family member. Be careful, because there's a reason why God is keeping that door closed. I used to think it was people that were boxing me out. It was people who didn't want me to be a part of it. But the more and more I walk with God, the closer and closer I get with God, I discover it's not people that are boxing me out. It's not people that are keeping me out, but God is keeping some doors closed. And I thank God for that today. Not only have we noticed the Christ, the type of church that God utilizes, not only, brothers and sisters, have we noticed also the condition, but here's the next thing, the challenge of the type of church that God utilizes. The challenge of the type of church that God utilizes. And I want to make sure that you understand, if you're going to be in this walk, if you're going to be in this army, there are going to be challenges. Don't let anybody fool you that every day is going to be a day of sunshine. Don't let everybody fool you that everybody is going to like you and always pat you on the back. Let me go ahead and bust your bubble right now. Everybody's not going to like you. Everybody's not going to always speak well of you, and everybody's not going to even always pat you on the back or say, great job or congratulations. But those are the challenges, some of the challenges of the type of church that God will utilize. When you look at verse number 9, he said, indeed, I will make those of the synagogue of say, who say they are Jews and are not, but lie indeed. I will make them come and worship before your feet and to know that I have loved you. Brothers and sisters, it's a challenge when the unbelievers try to stop your progress. When you're trying to do right. Have you ever found yourself trying to do right and you have people who try to stop your progress because they talk about you, they lie on you, your good is being spoken evil of? I guess I'm the only one that's ever felt like that. Trying to do good and find out later on somebody else is speaking evil about the good that I'm trying to do. I didn't bother them. Didn't even ask them to help or do anything. I'm just out here wanting to serve and do what it is that God has called Brian Hood, what God has called Community Point Baptist Church to do, and you have other people who don't have anything else better to do but to allow Satan to use them to badmouth the work that I'm trying to do for kingdom's sake. And yet, brothers and sisters, notice here in the text, God says, let them alone. God says, let them keep lying on you. God says, let them keep digging ditches. Because he said, I will let them know that I love you. I love you because this church, along with Community Point Baptist Church and Starkville Community Church, has kept my word in good times and even in bad times. And yet, you and I still have a love for the word of God. It's a faith that says, even if God don't deliver, I won't bow. It's a faith that says that even if God does not move, even if God does not deliver, I will not bow. Brothers and sisters, I want to encourage you. It's easy to keep God's word in the good times. But what about when things are not going so well in your life? Because whether you realize it or not, whether it's here this morning or whether it's Community Point Baptist Church, everybody that comes through our doors on Sunday morning, everybody don't always have it together. And there are people who come through our door and they are looking for a word. They are looking for an answer. And it's good, and you can praise God, and you can trust God when the bills are paid. You can trust God when you and your wife and children are getting along, and family as well. But what about when you're watching a loved one who you love, and you watch them fade away right before your eyes, and there's not anything that you can do? What do you do when you've heard people who you thought were close to you, but you find out they've been talking about you, they've been lying on you, they've been speaking evil of you? Can you still keep God's word even in the bad times? And I want to encourage you again, it's a faith that says that even if he doesn't deliver, I still won't bow. You remember the 3 Hebrew boys, don't you? You remember they were challenged, and because they would not bow, and yes, they were thrown in the fire. And yet notice what they said before they were thrown in. King, we're not going to do such things. We're not going to speak to such things. The God we serve is able, but even if he don't, he's still able. And we will not bow. Brothers and sisters, I want to encourage you as I hurry to my close this morning. Let's not be afraid to help take on the vision that God has given to help make not only Starkville Community Church a great church, but the vision that God has given to make Community Point Baptist Church a great church. We can't get something by keeping something. We get something by turning it loose. And every time you turn things loose, God will always make sure you get more of it back. But here's the last thing that I want you to notice here in our text. Not only have we talked about the Christ, not only have we talked about the condition, not only have we talked about the challenges, but here's the last thing you notice here in our text. The comfort for the type of church that God utilizes. The comfort for the type of church that God utilizes. Notice here in verses 12 and 13. Notice where the Lord said he will mark them with a threefold identification. The threefold blood in the book of Exodus. You remember, brothers and sisters, when the death angel flew over Egypt and every house that was marked, he passed over because exemption occurred. And brothers and sisters, I want to make sure that you know as I close my Bible to prove to you that I am done with the sermon this morning, because exemption has occurred. He will take care of the things, brothers, that's most concerning to you and I this morning. No matter what you're dealing with this morning, no matter what you're going through, God will write his name on your forehead and my forehead. God will take care of the things that's most concerning to us. But God can only do that with the type of church that he utilizes. There's some things that God want to use you today for, brothers and sisters. But he can't do that until he removes some things from you. I'm going to ask Brother Joe if he'll come at this time. I'm going to offer the invitation this morning. God want to use you right now. There are things that God want to do with you and others. He wants to utilize you. But there's some things, brothers and sisters, some doors that God has got to shut so that he'll be first in your life. Whatever it is that you're struggling with, you don't have to struggle with it by yourself. And that's the problem. You're trying to do it by yourself. God said, if you let me come in, God said, I can take care of those things that's most concerning to you.